Welcome back to the Within podcast. This is special edition. Wish I would have known, one of our favorite topics that we talk about with our guests or just amongst ourselves. But today I have, or I guess I should introduce myself. This is your host, Nicky Wallace, and I have Heidi Buttolph on here as well today. So I wish I would have known. So I know we let the cat out of the bag a couple weeks ago that I'm pregnant. I'm now 15 weeks pregnant as we record this. I know. Crazy. And I will say the last month or so has just been, I have not felt great. It's been kind of a struggle to keep like all the wheels on the bus moving is kind of what I always say. And I was
maybe
undecided.
the secret.
What'd you say?
And maybe even your secret to keep your secret. It's kind of hard to keep a secret if you're
not feeling well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was talking to Heidi about this, and I was like, this is actually a good one because I wish I would have known that while I was on site last week at a client, one of the gals that I work with pretty frequently, it was just her and I there, and she looked at me and said, I can just tell you don't feel good, like your whole energy is different. And it kind of threw me off because I was thinking like, oh yeah, I'm just still here, I'm doing all the things, I'm getting all the things done. And she was very kind about it, like she wasn't, like, oh, you're dropping the ball or anything, but she was just like, your energy is just different. I can tell that you're struggling in the nicest way possible. And it really took me back to, yes, I'm pregnant right now, so I have a good reason, but it took me back to the health journey I had for several years. And, I was quote unquote showing up still, I felt like I couldn't share what was going on, or I couldn't, let people kind of in on what was happening with me kind of behind closed doors, because I was scaling my agency, and I was, I had a team of 10 people at that point, and I was, newer entrepreneur. I'd been at the game about 3 years at that point, but we had just moved into our space, and kind of all of these things were happening. And I didn't say anything to anybody, but it made me, when she said that to me last week, it made me think how many times did my team, who didn't really know me very well, most of them didn't know me very well because we had just, really started to grow. How many times were they oh my gosh, what's going on with Nicky, and just not asking because maybe they didn't feel comfortable. And so it just made me think through all of the times in my career, all the times that I've watched other people and been on the other side saying man, something seems to be going on with Heidi or with, said person I'm working with. And I think the wish I would have known that kind of makes me think through is, you go to work every day with these people for hours, right? So some of them probably know you better than your husband or your spouse or your kids or whatever. But B, you don't always have to share every nitty gritty detail, but I wish I could have known that I could maybe be open about, especially with, some of the leaders of my team, and let them know kind of what was going on so that, they could perform or help or step in where I needed to. So I didn't have to kind of do the gutting through, what I think so many people talk about. So, I don't know, it just kind of, it goes along with everything we talk about in the well-being space, right? That yeah. I think a lot of us try to show up every day, even if we're not feeling good. And when it becomes a day after day thing, or there's something going on behind the scenes that people don't know, it just at some point that takes a toll on your body. It takes a toll on your team because maybe they don't know how to interact with you, and you may not realize you're just trying to survive. You may not realize if you're being short with somebody, or you're not following up as quickly because you're just in this survival mode, maybe is the best way to say it. So
yeah,
I don't know if that's a good one or not, but I was just ever since she said it, I'm like, man, yeah, I didn't really think that I was that different, right?
Mm-hmm. And so true. I think back to, and this, the kind of the story I shared with you, Nikki, and we were talking about it, is I grew up always with the you can't feel sorry for yourself, pick your ass up, keep on going. Yep. And so I always have put this front on that I'm happy-go-lucky, I'm my strength, I'm very strong. But to your point, sometimes that might even come across negative.
Right.
I'm overcompensating for my
Right.
trying to be strong because I am holding so much in. That I've even gotten feedback at work sometimes that are, maybe even negative feedback that like, and I'm like, but you're so strong. And I'm like, no, I'm really struggling inside, but I
Yeah.
just haven't shared that. So I think two things that I love about the person that said something to you is one is acknowledging,
Yep.
instead of just letting it and go on and actually saying, hey, you don't appear as though you have as much
Yep.
energy today. And I think that's great
Yeah.
because acknowledging it and that we all do come to work maybe a little bit differently sometimes one day
Yep.
over a next. And are you okay? And
Right.
having those types of conversations, because in the past, I don't think that people would either make the time or feel comfortable even saying it and just kind
Right.
of keep on going with, something must be going on and I'll just let it go. But then if it goes on too long, it starts impacting relationships, how you
Yeah.
communicate, your performance, all that good stuff. So I
Yeah.
love the fact that she brought it up, and too
Yeah.
that you're bringing up, as I wish I would have known, because I do think when we're trying to build that place where that you do go every day, that you want to go every day, that you love getting up Monday morning and want to go to, that you have the types of relationships that people can acknowledge when you're off, and maybe even helping you,
Yeah. And
carry your load a little bit, or whatever the
yes,
case may be.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is where some people get a little squeamish when they're like leaders in an organization or running an organization. Because it's like, oh gosh, like I don't want to know what's going on all the time, right? Like I don't want to know all the details. And I'll be honest, like and part of my past career, like I was very open with one of my leaders, and I think, she would ask we would get very, very personal. Like that was just kind of the culture of the organization. And I do think in some ways it held me back, some of the things I shared that I was maybe going through or thinking about or whatever. So I do think there's a fine line, but I think, erring on the side of just even asking the question of like, hey, you seem off. Like, are you okay? I think just, again, we don't need to know everybody's life story when if they're not comfortable sharing, with every time somebody shows up and doesn't seem to feel good. But if it tends to be a pattern, there's probably something that they could use a listening ear for a few minutes, or maybe could use an accommodation for. And it doesn't, oftentimes it's not as scary as the leader thinks it may be to just, be vulnerable and ask that question, or, I don't know if you're relating to this, Heidi, but I just am thinking back to, like, I think the first job I ever had, I feel like if somebody was like sniffling, you stayed away from them because you like didn't want them to go home because you needed them to get the start with, you know what I mean? So it was like, we're expected to kind of get through some of those things. And it's like, that creates a culture and creates something that long-term is not super sustainable for people. So
Yeah.
anyway.
When we had one of our guests on, Nola, and when I asked
Oh,
the
yeah.
question, what's the most surprising or what's the best thing that's changed or evolved? I loved when she said, because it's kind of that we're caring for people.
Yeah.
Because if you even think about it, some of the campaigns that have ran more around mental well-being is it's okay. Yep. It's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And now some organizations are even allowing for, mental health days, not just I'm sick, but instead I need some time to reset and just, and so I love that's something that's evolved. And I wish I would have known back in the earlier part of my career, the mid part, to acknowledge that it's okay, when we're not okay, and acknowledge that.
Exactly.
So it's unfortunate though to hear you. I mean, and I know it is what it is, that sometimes by being vulnerable and sharing too much with people, again, I know there's always, there's a happy or a fine line, but that you felt like sharing held you back.
Oh, 100% it did. The culture, kind of like the environment that I was in with my prior employer before I started this company, that was like carefrontations is what we called it, and like kind of pushing people. We grew so quickly. I joined the company locally when it was very small, and so the core group of us, then like my manager became the director, and, you know, all of these people started getting into these bigger roles, and they were getting, you know, pushed down from corporate on, you know, what needed to happen and stuff like that. But I think we all knew each other like so personally, and I was having some mental health things at that point. And looking back, I think a lot of it was from the stress that was happening, just like the high expectations. We never, you know, we were all young, so we would work all day, work, try and do all the things and get all the starts and do all the things. And then we would go out and drink a lot at night. And so it was like we were all in this like crazy cycle of work hard for 14 hours a day and then go party and do it all again the next day. And yeah, I think like definitely it was starting to take a mental toll on me because I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't taking care of you know, a lot of my personal side because I was so identified so much with this organization I was part of, and winning, that was our thing, you know, everybody's got to win. And yeah, I mean, I distinctly remember a conversation where I think some of that turned, and I'm, you know, I don't regret it because she asked the question and then asked the second question and the third question and the fourth question, and I was very open with her. But yeah, I think that is kind of where some of the things changed with that organization. So. Mm-hmm.
And I would probably even kind of bubble it up because again, as you kind of evolve in your career, you feel as though sometimes you have to change who your persona or your identity. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing, you know, I wish I would have known that I should have just stayed true to who I am. And, you know, because when it's all said and done, if you do try to adapt or change your own values or personality, whatever you want to call it, you just find out that you're no longer really fitting, or you're not as fulfilled, or you're not as happy in that role or with that organization. So, you know, it kind of turns into another, I wish I would have known, just, you know, stay true to who you are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we've done that one.
We have. Yeah.
So anyway, if you are leading a team or working alongside, it doesn't even have to be leading a team, it's just the individual contributor. I mean, you know, this person by no means reports to me, or, you know, I'm just the consultant that comes in, and they tend to work a lot with, you know, so yeah, to your point, it was cool that she felt comfortable enough to say, you know, to say something. And I did go home and take a nap because I did feel like absolute hell. So she was not wrong when she said something.
So you thanked her. Did you thank her?
Yeah. I did, yes. Yeah. I think she actually like texted me later that day and was just like, "Are you feeling better?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm feeling better." So anyway, we're all human at the end of the day, no matter what you're going through. So.
Love it.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us on this special edition. Wish I would have known, and we'll see you next week. I know. That's why I was like, I need to talk through this before, because I don't know exactly how to put it into words. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's good.
Well, and especially if you're new to a role, right? People kind of get to know you as that. And if you weren't yourself going into a new role, then they're going to assume that's just kind of who you are, unless you tell them differently or something happens to bring that up. Yeah.
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 All right. What do you want to do? Do you want to do one of yours, or do you want to do...
Do you want to do the always people before processes?
Yeah.
Okay.
We could do that one.
I mean, that one probably will be a short one. It's not like, that's essentially the one statement I have. So, and if we can ham and egg it, it'll obviously be better than so.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, we used to, like, as salespeople grow in their roles, like, we used to always So yeah, I will be able to.
Okay.
We're going to talk about don't let people or process trump common sense. Okay, Aki, are we good to just keep going? Okay. All right, welcome back to Within Podcast. Today you have Nicky Wallace and Heidi Buttolph. We're excited to talk about probably a topic that we've all experienced at some point within organizations. It's don't let the process trump common sense is how I say it. I feel like Heidi said it differently, but processes over, or people over processes essentially is I think how Heidi said this topic. So Heidi, do you want to start and we can just kind of talk about experiences in this area?
Well, and I think, what brought that up is think about starting up organizations, right? Or whether it be a small to medium-sized business or a larger organization. I've always felt the kind of the emotional intelligence is what's really important, and just really the people. Because you were in the field of hiring people. I, led a HR team. And so we were doing all of it. But the importance of hiring really good people was really, at the essence of what the success of the organization. Mm-hmm. And I know as we grow and so forth, processes need to come into place just to create efficiency and so forth. But I have been, when I was part of a Fortune 100 company, it just felt like we were always implementing more and more processes or models that then people had to, have either on their desk posted somewhere or memorized. And it just got to a point of complexity, and it's just like, keep it simple, and let's focus on the people that you're bringing into the organization and what and again, I know people will probably say, well, a process is job descriptions. How do you know what their role is if you don't have some of those things in place? And I'm not discounting the value of having all those very things in place. It's just more, how do we start with the human element and getting to know people and building the trust and communication. We've talked about communication and the importance of communication. You could have all those things in place. And if you don't have the appropriate amount of communication, and again, just building those relationships with the people and building the trust and so forth, I don't really think it'll matter how many processes or models you have in place.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm working with a couple of different companies that are scaling quickly right now, and so yes, I agree. The thing with processes and strategy and all of that structure, I do think people thrive when they have a little bit of process and structure. Like, everybody needs to know what box they need to play in, right? But I think that, like I started the show with, is we used to always say in a prior company I worked for is, don't let the process trump common sense. So especially when you're in front of customers, or, I feel like they trained us so much on like, this is, we had all the sheets at our desks that we were supposed to follow, and we role played and did all the things. So they did a good job training us. But I think some of the folks in the field, they would get like paralyzed almost by like, oh, the client said XYZ. So it's like they were trying to catalog in their minds on like, what am I supposed to do and say next? And it's like, sometimes there's going to be gray area. And I think recognizing that is what you're saying, and making sure that there is room to be able to interpret things or process things differently as situations come up, because humans are buying and humans are running the organization. So
well, and if you let the process dictate, you're all it'll be like robotic, right? To a certain degree, instead of just letting the personality come out and helping, yes, there's always going to be guardrails. I don't mind the guardrails. It's just allowing them the freedom to be them and to, make decisions based on what they feel is right, given how they have been trained and the experience that they bring to the table and so forth. So that's just the biggest element when I look back on, because, at the end of the day, we're all human.
Yep.
There's some concern too with, as we talk about humans and roles and now AI, things will evolve and certain roles may go away because of processes and technology take over. And so it's like, how do you continue to elevate or appreciate or leverage the human element of an organization to differentiate yourselves?
I think a lot of it too comes back to, as I'm helping this one organization kind of build out a lot of their process and strategy is, understanding your foundation, where the organization is going. And I think like the communication there, like that very foundational piece, because if you start with a strong foundation and your team is communicating and everybody knows why they're there and what their roles are and how we're all working together for the greater good, then as you build kind of some of those processes and all the things that come along with growth, the empowerment piece is there, that they can make those decisions when the gray area comes in or when the customer calls and is pissed off because something happened that we've never had happen before, and they're able to pivot because, they have some of that, they feel empowered by their organization or their leader to be able to, live in the gray area and make those decisions. So,
yeah, no, I agree.
Everybody needs to know the North Star, because I think that happened, or that's where a lot of that, and hire people that you trust, hire people and give them the experience and the knowledge that you trust, that they'll make the decisions or at least come talk to you if they don't know how to.
Well, and oftentimes those people might come on board and have their own ideas that could be even better, and whether you call it challenging the status quo or just empowering them to kind of ask why do we do it this way, or have you thought of, and just, again, allowing the people to maybe control a little bit more of that versus the process controlling. Like I do love how you said, don't let the process trump common sense. Instead, it's there to pave the way and provide the guardrails, but still the human element and the people decision making and communication are what I believe are the most important.
Yeah. I mean, in most of my career, and I know a lot of yours, has been with very people heavy roles. So, in the staffing world, if somebody doesn't go to work, you don't get paid, literally. Like that's how the setup was. So, I think the good people in that area, they're able to kind of understand, like, hey, here's the tools, here's the process, here's the things that probably will happen, and the things the recipe that I need to follow. But then, when Joey calls in and something's going on with his kid and he doesn't have a car and a ride to work, and it's like, you got to know how to pivot. And I always, that was one thing I appreciated with all the training. But as the company grew, like, I felt very empowered to, do what I needed to do to make the human element, not be like a big deal, really. So they always taught us to just you're not selling, you're at the end of the day building relationships. So I was always grateful for that training they gave us. But
and I think in general, and I love hearing that, Nikki, because once you feel empowered, I mean, that's what's most fulfilling, when people can come in and again, use their training, what they've learned, but do what they feel is right and grow in it, and seek out new opportunities as well, or, maybe even enhance what they're already doing, what they came into and so forth. So I love that empowerment element.
So where do you feel like you've seen, or where have you seen, I guess, over your career, like organizations get this kind of wrong, or like organizations struggle with this?
I think sometimes it is just the shiny objects, right?
Yeah.
Instead of just focusing on what's already going great, we keep on implementing new processes, may not be, but models, like leadership models, or, you go through how many different kinds of leadership training because there's a new, and granted, I'm not saying that leadership doesn't evolve over time too,
right?
But it's sometimes like, how many different assessments should we do? Team assessments, leadership assessments. They kind of sometimes evolve too because of the different leaders that come into the organization, and they use that at a prior organization. And like I said, sometimes that's what you have to be open to. But if it changes on too regular of a basis, it's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, then you have all these models and processes that you have to know and try to figure out, where they're not always common sense. Like you said, there's something that you have to constantly study or have,
Right.
eyeballed. And so I just think we just have to be careful in organizations that you don't overwhelm your workforce with all different kinds of work models. So maybe process and how they go about their work, but then also all the other things that you add on top from a leadership perspective and things like that.
And I think while you were talking about that, this made me even think of as we've been growing as an organization, like the technology has. I never expected when I was starting a business that technology would be like the thing that paralyzed me, because there's just so many options. There's so many different, here's you need to do bookkeeping, and now here's 50 options, and you got to figure out which system is the best. And half the time, we don't really know, right? Because I didn't start a business to do bookkeeping, so I don't know what software I'm really needing at the end of the day. So I do think that's hard on employees when you're constantly like, hey, this is how we're using this system, or, oh, we're not using this system anymore, we're flipping to this one. And I think in an ever-changing world, like you had brought up AI and tech, it's good for leaders, I think, to stay cognizant on, even if you spend time all the time every week on technology that's coming up, or how to implement things through technology, or have your processes go a certain way through technology. Your employees aren't always that adept or able to adapt to some of that technology change. So I think being super aware as you make some of those system changes. I see it sometimes too when I help companies implement HRS systems. It's like you spend all this time as the leader implementing the system, and it's going to do all these great things, and these leaders are going to be self-service, and they can go in and put in their own requisitions. And I think a lot of companies get frustrated because then 50% of the people or more don't actually use the system how it's intended. It's because they have a job on top of that. They don't know or have the time to be able to, and then go self-teach themselves on how to use this system, or how you're asking them to use this system. So I just thought of that.
Yeah, we oftentimes think we're implementing processes and systems to make work better or easier. And sometimes, like you said, it just adds more complexity or frustration. And so maybe at the end of the day, it's just asking, is this new process, new system, whatever you want to call it, is it really going to help our people be better? I'm not a big believer of more is better, but better is better. And how do we just make sure that and you're not going to get buy-in from everyone, especially the bigger the organization. You have to make decisions, and they just have to deal with it. But then again, you have to think about how you work through the change management element of it too. And so at the end of the day, is just making sure that we're evaluating what we're implementing based on how it'll help our people.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
So organizations are ever changing, no matter, I don't care what size you are or what industry you are. I feel like just you have to evolve, but just be smart about it. So
I agree.
Good. Anything else on this topic?
I don't think so. We'll see if we get any reaction from this one.
I know. I do feel like people get very, when we talk about some of the process and technology and all that, I do feel like people are very opinionated on kind of how to implement that, or what should happen or shouldn't happen or whatever. So it's always a hot topic for whatever reason. So probably because it impacts your people so much. But well, good. Well, thanks for joining us on today's episode of Within, and we'll see you next week.